I am not interested in running for mayor to just be mayor. I am not interested in trying to present to somebody that I'm the biggest, baddest person in the room or I have all the answers. I'm interested in bringing our community together, bringing the people who want to be a part of the solution, bringing the people who have good ideas. I have no conceit that I have all the right ideas, but I have some ideas. But I want all of us to be in conversation. I want us to see if we can have a shared aspiration for what we want.
We're rolling. We're rolling.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.
I'm going to jump right into it because I have a whole bunch of things I want to talk about. I'm very excited about 2025, if you can tell. This is the Wedge Live podcast. I'm your host, John Edwards, and today we're talking to a mayoral candidate. That's right, city elections in 2025 in Minneapolis. I'm joined by Reverend Dr. DeWayne Davis. He's the lead minister at Plymouth Congregational Church, just south of downtown in the Stevens Square neighborhood. He's a former congressional staffer, has served as chaplain of the Minnesota State Senate. He's a resident of the Willard Hay neighborhood in North Minneapolis. And as I said, he's gotten an early start on the 2025 city election by announcing his campaign for mayor of Minneapolis. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to talk to you.
How long ago did you make the decision to run?
I've been in conversation about the possibility of doing this for at least 2 years, but it was something that I kept saying that I didn't want to do, or I didn't think that that was the best way for me to serve. But I always am looking for the best way to serve. So although I had been mulling this idea around with others, I kept thinking that, it's best to just sort of do what I did, which is work in the community, of course, be a pastor of my church and offer my service wherever I can. What happened, however, is that by this past summer, I really felt called to step up in a different way. And I really went through a period of prayer and discernment. I know some people don't like that language, but it's a part of my faith expression, but where real deep prayer and discernment about it. And by the end of the summer, by August, I really felt that this was the way I needed to meet the moment. And I decided to take that jump.
So looking at your bio, there's a certain point you decided you're going to leave politics.
Yes.
You work as a staffer in Congress, and now you're back. I assume you left for a good reason. So
and you are really honing in, John, on the importance of the bio. There was and that's one of I think the reasons I hesitated about or took so long to decide about how I was going to come back. Yes, one of the reasons I left politics, and what people have to understand, I was in politics in Washington, D.C., which is on a whole other order of magnitude. I was worked on Capitol Hill. My last stint on Capitol Hill, I worked for Leader Steny Hoyer. I was his appropriations director. But what happened at that point is I hit that fork in the road. It was all consuming. When I left Capitol Hill, I became a lobbyist. I was a co-chair of a political action committee. And what I was experiencing was not only politics at such a high level, but I was at a fork in the road. If I had stayed where I was in both lobbying and campaign financing, there was a part of me that felt like it was so all-consuming that I had lost myself. And in conversations with, a therapist and with friends, the question was, what is the quality of your life going to look like? I never lost my desire for public service. But when I took a step back and a therapist said, you should probably go to church because you were a church boy, I'm the son of a preacher, I thought that was a ridiculous idea. But when I did it, what I then saw, the experience of going back to church, being part of a faith community, what I discovered was all of the desires and drives I had for public service, all of the desires and drive I had for tending to the well-being and welfare of people, church gave me a different lens by which to see it. And so ironically, it's my faith journey that actually, I think, equipped me better to deal with politics, to keep what I think I was missing in my earlier stint, missing that human connection, that relationship connection, that dignity and compassion that should be a part of anybody's work, whether you're in politics or in religion. And so that's why I think I'm back, because I think faith equipped me with that human connection, that idea of community that politics didn't hone as much.
So when people decide to run for office, if they're taking it seriously as they should, like you run through the pros and cons and you're like, these are all the reasons I should, these are the reasons I shouldn't. So tell me all the reasons you shouldn't be doing this, that you weighed in your mind, that you overcame. Like, why should you not be here?
That's a very good question. Well, the first reason I shouldn't be doing is because I love being pastor and I love being lead minister of Plymouth Church. I love that building of community. I love when we come together and we share a vision for how we're going to serve. I love preaching. My doctorate is in preaching, biblical preaching. So I love going on a journey with my congregation of exploring the context and history of our spiritual forebears and freshly voicing those values and commitments in our current life. That gives me a lot of energy. I'm also an adjunct professor at United Theological Seminary. I teach preaching and church leadership. My students, it's so wonderful to be in a learning community. I learn so much from them, and so, boy, that is something that I love, and I kept saying, do I want to give that up? So those are the two things where those are the places that bring me certainly life, but they give me spiritual currency. They give me spiritual holding. And so even when I was thinking about this, I kept saying, why would I want to leave those things that feed me like that? So that was the con. I'm still coming to terms with that being, at least not as a bigger part of my life should I prevail as I plan to. But that was the con. Another con is that my chosen family is. I have so much love and acceptance among my friends here in the Twin Cities and my friends across the United States. Relationships I've had since many of us grew up together in Washington, D.C., and we've moved across the nation. But that is also, that kind of anonymity and that ability to sort of get away and be just one of the guys and just one of the those are the things that once you do this and when you prevail, you lose some of that ability to hide and just be among the people who love you.
Yeah, there are times if you're mayor when you're going to want to hide. We've had a lot of those days.
Right. Or, you go into a restaurant and you can laugh and you can talk and no one knows you from Adam and they don't care. That's the kind of thing that I really thought about, because I draw such strength from the love of my friends and family.
So when I heard you were running, I thought to myself, I had a good impression. I'm like, oh, great. We have what looks like a very good candidate for mayor, and we're going to have a choice in 2025, at least one alternative.
Yeah.
But then I'm thinking, he seems nice. I've seen a few videos, seems like a very nice person. And will he have, this is before I learned that you had been in politics before, you'd been a congressional staffer. And I'm like, does he have a hard enough edge? Right? Because politics can get mean. Like, does he have the stomach for it? Because being mayor of Minneapolis, especially recently, like you take some punches, and sometimes you have to throw some punches. And like, do you have the stomach for it?
John, I hate to assume that you haven't been in church.
So
Church
it's true. It's true. I have not been in church.
Church politics ain't beanbags, my friend.
Okay.
Well, John, I'm going to be very honest with you. One of the challenges for me going into ministry was my worry that I would carry over the hard edge into ministry. And I was very intentional because, again, I started working on Capitol Hill right after I graduated from college. So I was socialized and trained in the fulcrum of politics, and I learned a great deal. So one of the things that I was really concerned about when I went into ministry was coming with that sort of political hard edge. Now, as I've matured, what I've discovered is I don't have to compartmentalize and segment out any parts of myself. What I do have to do is have the emotional intelligence to respond to what's given. I say very clear to people that I serve in churches that I do want to lead with dignity and compassion. I want to see the humanity in the person with whom I disagree. And I will both defend what I'm doing. I will also challenge when I think someone is, in essence, moving beyond, beyond debate, beyond disagreement, to demonizing and dehumanizing someone. So my point simply is, fight hard, marshal your whatever you need to make your case and to win your battle. But we can do that without forgetting that there is another human being on the other side of me. So my point to you is, I do have that edge, but I also want to start with seeing my opponents as the human beings that they are. I think, by the way, that's what we have been missing in our politics too much lately, where people look at their political opponents and see them as existential threats to be demolished and pulverized. That's unnecessary. I'm gonna give as good as I get. I'm gonna try to do it with honor and dignity. I'm gonna try to make sure I do with honesty. But I'm not going to. I don't see anybody as somebody to tear down and beat up and destroy. But I'm a debater, and I believe in marshaling your evidence. But even when I talk to people, I say I believe that we can have a good, honest debate without lying, without demeaning, and without misleading the people. And as long as that happens, I think we can do good work. But I will point it out. If you lie, I say you're a liar, or I'll say you lied. I don't mince words on that. If I say that I think you're misleading, if I say that you've done something that I think that lacks integrity, if I say you're being dishonest, I think that's worth calling out. So I know people are going to come after me. Listen, I'm a black man, I'm a gay man. I've been called and many things. I've had to steel my spine for a world that has begrudgingly included me. I've had to fight for every inch to get in. So yeah, it is a tough thing. And even when we were talking about that pros and cons, in all of my conversations with my husband, with my friends, I have been saying, can you handle it? Because I think I can. And on a lighter note, I'm the 15th child, so I've had some older brothers who made me ready for anything that come for you.
That's one thing I left out of the bio. That's I'm an only child who doesn't go to church, and you are one of 15 children, and you are a pastor. So,
yes, indeed.
So I was struck by your introductory video themed on the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty. And you're talking about partnerships with other levels of government, obviously. It's not just, you're not running for mayor to eradicate poverty, but by yourself, I mean.
Right. But
one thing I think a lot about is Mayor Frey's pledge during his first mayoral campaign in 2017 to eradicate homelessness in 5 years. And clearly the 5 years has passed, and it's a bigger issue than ever. Like, was that too bold a pledge? Has he failed in some way to follow through on that? Or, like, what is your take?
So one of the reasons I think it's important to look at poverty, because again, I think, and I'm not going to gainsay his pledge, and I don't know what he was thinking. I don't know if that was rhetorical or if he really thought that was something he can handle. But one of the reasons I want to talk about poverty is because I think we don't talk about poverty enough. In essence, even the issues that we're dealing with, many of the issues that we're talking about all the time, encampments, or we're talking about young people stealing cars, or we're talking about all these kind of things, those are symptoms of poverty. And one of the reasons, John, I wanted to talk about poverty is, one, I want us to talk about it. We've lost their ability to talk about it. And part of it, I think, is no one wants to admit they're in poverty. I think people are gun shy about it because the only time that the national government actually said we're going to do something about poverty was during the Great Society program, and that had a mixed response at best. But the reason I want to talk about poverty is because I think the things that we're dealing with here come from that understanding of poverty, or that thing called poverty. And here's how I'll put it. Minneapolis, it has a reputation for being, just a prosperous city. All of those, those surveys, we are the most walkable city. We're the city with the great quality of life. We're the city, the most livable city. Every time you go through your wall, you have one of these surveys that puts us there. But what no one ever understands, like even economists say, cities are the hubs and drivers of a region, the economic growth of a region. That's where the energy is. That's where the innovation. That's where people take risks to do business. That's even where large businesses want to locate. But what we don't talk about is that there is an externality that comes from that. When you are the place that is the engine of economic growth, what comes along with that is poverty and inequality. But here's the thing. Poverty and inequality are not naturally occurring. We spend a lot of time trying to attract business. We try to attract that economic growth. We try to talk about that economic growth. But we forget the other part of that equation. Whenever you have that growth, you're going to have unintended inequality and poverty. So then what is the question? Then the question then becomes, and by the way, it's not just inequality and poverty, it's you have to deal with infrastructure. You have inadequate housing. You have inadequate schools. And even because business have so much power, ironically, sometimes you get reduced tax capacity. So which means then all of these things that are happening are not naturally occurring. We've just spent all of our attention on trying to attract business and trying to get economic growth. What I'm asking us to do is, when we do attract business, when we are the hub and driver of economic growth, we also need to put our focus on the negative externality. How are we exacerbating inequality? How are we exacerbating poverty? And do some intentional things to address it. Do some intentional things to to increase wages or to put more income in people's pockets. Be more intentional about broadening the social safety net. So for me, the reason I want to mention poverty is I want us to keep that presence of mind. That every time we experience a spurt of growth, if we are the hub and drive of economic growth and innovation, we have to also be looking out for the negative externalities that come from that. We have to be looking out for how do we balance the power of business with the needs of our community. So I started with poverty because I want to be on record as the first candidate to mention poverty, not walk away from it. But I also want us to begin to think about that as a part that's going to be with us. And then we can be intentional about it every step of the way in other things that we're doing.
So what should we be doing about encampments and very shockingly young people engaged with gun violence and riding around in stolen cars? Just feels like that has been a problem for so long now, and we're not closer to addressing it. We're not making progress.
Well, so here's the thing, and those are things that I really, I'm not going to go too much detail, but what I'll say is, you're saying something that I think is very important. The city does have tools at its disposal to be in conversation, to sort of drive how we think about some of these things. And so, again, with encampments, one of the things I feel a problem is that we're not leveraging all of our authority at every level. We're not leveraging our regulatory authority. We're not leveraging our relationships with local providers, providers who are doing things already. In essence, the question for me then is, how do we leverage the assets of a city to help us come to some answers to some of our intractable problems? So again, you were talking about children. When I served on the mayor's work group for public safety work group, even before we had the spate of back in 2022, the spring of 2022, before we had a spate of young children stealing cars, we had a recommendation in that group that, look, there are a lot of pieces of the city, there are a lot of departments of the city that have a piece of youth programming. How about the mayor bringing all of those people together to see what we share in common, what programs are we duplicating, or what programs we can kind of collaborate on, that we can divert kids, where we can do some kinds of intervention. And that's what I mean about leveraging the city. How do we leverage our assets and take the leadership on these questions? We're a city, we're an urban area. We know of some things we're going to have. We know we're going to have some housing issues. We know we're going to have some crime issues. So how do we get in front of it? How do we leverage our authority, our regulatory authority, our zoning authority, our relationships with providers who are doing work in housing and in chemical dependency? How do we leverage our leadership and our authority, bring these people together, and do some real constructive thing? I am not interested, by the way, in running for mayor to just be mayor. I am not interested in trying to present to somebody that I'm the biggest, baddest person in the room, or I have all the answers. I'm interested in bringing our community together, bringing the people who want to be a part of the solution, bringing the people who have good ideas. I have no conceit that I have all the right ideas, but I have some ideas. But I want all of us to be in conversation. I want us to see if we can have a shared aspiration for what we want, and then how do we get there? Some people tend to think that it's all about ideology. Ideology plays a role. That's how you organize your thought, organize your approach to something. But what I want to do is, whatever your ideology is, Let's say what we would, if we want to house as many people as possible, let's get in this room together and figure out what are the best. Let's share our ideas. Let's share what we know. Let's share our questions. What do we understand? So I just think we are not taking advantage of all that is good about Minneapolis, all of the energy, all of the excitement, all of the desire for this to be the kind of city we tell everybody it is. And also, how do we get away from parceling out? I live in North, and the worst thing that I've heard over and over since I've lived here is a sense that this city doesn't even have regard for the thoughts, ideas, and concerns of people in North Minneapolis. I saw it, in terms of the way people talk about crime. I told people I live in North Minneapolis, and people started saying, "Oh, are you okay?" Or and it struck me in that how can one part of our city be written off? Even the beginning of that. But to answer your question, I'm just saying we know that as an urban area, we're going to have some of these occurring things. Why don't we get out in front of that? Why don't we leverage what is good about us? Why don't we leverage the city authority? Why don't we do all of those things so that we can get out in front of this? Like I said, so the encampment question, everybody with a piece of that should be involved. The city should be at the forefront of investments, both in dollars, but also in ideas about how to do it. We should be in relationship with all of the providers on the ground, many of whom are ready to be a part of a solution. I think there are many ways we can do it. I just feel that it seems like our city hasn't been leveraging those opportunities. It has not been leveraging those relationships to try to and pull everyone together. Is how I feel.
So in 2021, after Frey was reelected, he appointed you as co-chair of the community safety work group that he had. And the group made a series of recommendations about police recruitment and training and violence interrupters and a series of things. So do you feel like the mayor followed through on those things? You were the co-chair of the group making those recommendations. Now you're running for mayor. I could imagine maybe you don't feel like he followed through. What happened?
I can say that the mayor followed through on one of our major recommendations. He followed through and made some initial investments in alternative behavioral health response. And I am appreciative of that. But again, I am concerned. I do believe that, and I don't want to be too hard here because I know there was several investigations in terms of the Department of Justice, the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. So there were a lot of things that they were paying attention to. However, my worry is that the mayor just simply did not take advantage of the work and the recommendations. I think he treated that as a report to say it was done and then put it on the shelf. Again, with all due respect, he did really go in on the behavioral health response units, which was a major recommendation of ours to make sure that there were alternatives to police always responding to a mental health crisis and mental health challenge. But I think there were many things in there that could have served the mayor, and for whatever reason, he didn't feel the need to spend a lot of time with some of those recommendations. And like I said, I think some of those recommendations we're seeing. If he had paid attention to them, I think we could have gotten out in front of several things. We could have gotten out in front of the spate of children stealing in cars and joyriding and that kind of thing. We could have, I think, done a little bit more constructive work with violence interrupters and those anti-violence community programs. We could have really had some real investment and some real conversation around expanding that. Even I know now in Stevens Square, one of the things that we wanted that in that report, we suggested that we should look at some of the violence interrupters that are models for not only their programming, but how they are using the dollars that they're giving, so that we can go into neighborhoods that don't have them. And so Stevens Square doesn't have a violence interrupter organization. But since then, we've seen those organizations, those neighborhoods without them, they don't have that kind of presence, but not only to help the residents, but to help the police. So, I mean, those are kinds of things that if they had gotten in, if they had just, and by the way, and remember, the report was for what the mayor could do, not what the city council. So these were things that the mayor could have really gotten people to work on, city staff to work on, city resources to deploy for. These are things that could have been done that way, but for whatever reason, he chose not to do it. So there were things there that I not only, by the way, I stand behind them because in that work group, we had people on opposite ends of the spectrum. And all of us, most of us stayed in that room. We lost only 2 people, but we stayed in that room and we came together. It also proves what you can do. At the end, it didn't matter what our ideologies were. What mattered is we studied the issues. We talked to a lot of people. We talked to a lot of organizations. We talked to a lot of residents. And we were able to come up with some recommendations for the mayor, even though many of us probably disagree vehemently on all kinds of things. And so to me, that also was an example, not only of what we can do when we work together, but I think you will be well served when people from opposite ends of the spectrum come together and say, here are some of our ideas about how we can do this work together.
One thing I can imagine the mayor campaigning on in 25 is, and it was part of your recommendations, was increase pay so we can hire more police. Mm-hmm. We've heard that applications to MPD are up.
Yes.
And so one thing I'm worried about with that is maybe the training and accountability part of your recommendations. Like if we hire up at MPD real quick, but the training and accountability piece we have just fallen down on and are not doing appropriately, then we're kind of rebuilding an MPD that is no different from the old MPD. Like this, right? With staffing way down, it's an opportunity to rebuild the department into something completely different because you get all the old attitudes out, you bring in new ones, and I don't know from the outside that that's happening.
Well, and again, that also goes to where if the mayor follows all of the recommendations, we can address some of that. So 2 very critical pieces of those recommendations is the recruitment, where you do the recruitment, who the kinds of people you bring in. So part of that recruitment we would want to bring in people from alternative vocations, looking at potential social workers as people from a group of people from which to recruit, looking at teachers. In essence, what we wanted to do was we wanted to broaden the pool of potential people to go into the police recruitment so we can get a wider, broader view, a broader set of experiences to bring to bear on the police department. So that's where one of the critical pieces I think that was different here is that, yes, we wanted to meet the statutory requirement of how many police the city should have, but we were trying to figure out how can we get people that, not the usual suspects, not the kinds of people that turn out to be a Chauvin, but what about people who are already working with children and family? Again, social workers, or how about teachers? People who have an alternative pathway to the department. The second thing we said was start out with training. We are not using the gold standard of training, police training. We recommended going to the International Association of Directors of Law Enforcement standards and training. I don't know that we've done that. I don't know if we've overhauled the training. We are not using the different standard of training that we suggested. But we also, in that recommendation, we went through all of the things that we wanted in that training. Everything from training that sort of goes to equity training. Again, I know larger country, we're having people who are moving away from equity and diversity, but we were very clear about this training, including the IADLS training. It should include that equity training. It should, again, this training should also make sure that we follow anytime we know there are changes in national best practices and standards. Ideally, the IADLS training is supposed to have that, but that's what we want them to do. We also said, just clearly, the warrior type training that is in the other kinds of things that in all of the curriculum that they've been using, get it out of there, remove it all. So the recommendations we were making, again, recommendations, by the way, that the mayor could do with the chief and with others, is to go to some, upgrade that training, throw out the training we've been using, always be on the lookout for not only that training, but also make sure that we go through certification of that training. Because we also know that you can do training, but you can just say, we did the training, but how about getting certified in it, saying, you know what, this department met every one of our high standards of training. And that's what we should do. We should not just say, oh, and I think sometimes we do that check the box. Oh, we did the training. Well, did you do the training, or did you just check the box? So, and by the way, all that training has the training in bias, unbiased policing. It has stringent criteria to be certified. So we had all those recommendations in there. And I can see someone picking, I can even see the mayor picking, saying, oh, we got to get more. Look, we know we got that statutory requirement, and that's what we were trying to address. How do we meet that? But if we're going to meet it, let's not meet it the way we just say all commerce. We put in some of these new standards, these new training, and we broaden the way we recruit. That's what we were trying to do.
So there's a rite of passage for Minneapolis candidates, and that is being attacked or being supported by all of Minneapolis. Like, I imagine it's the mayor's pack, so they have to attack you, I assume, and they're going to have to come up with a nickname for you. Oh, and goodness. I'm thinking maybe DSA DeWayne. So
you really think they're going to call me DSA DeWayne? I mean, I tend to talk to everybody, so I don't know.
Yeah, they will paint you as a DSA aligned mayoral candidate. So defend yourself from the charge that you are DSA DeWayne.
Well, first of all, I don't feel the need to defend myself against that charge. Because I am a firm believer that the DSA and everyone from the DSA to the downtown council to the faith leaders I think everybody has a role to play in building the city we've got to build. So I don't have to defend myself from them. I don't have to defend myself from anyone. I think everyone who cares about Minneapolis is welcome to have a conversation about how we do this. And I welcome those conversations. I welcome the conversations with the police, by the way. But what I want us to do that in good faith. I want us to talk about what we agree on and we can share. I also want us to be honest about where we failed. We've got to be honest about where we've failed or where we've lacked awareness. We've got to say we made a mistake, and then we've got to figure out how to do it. So you can call me whatever you want to call me. That's okay. But I don't feel I am not going to I don't feel a need to distance myself from anybody in this regard.
Well, after this podcast, you will have to distance yourself from me, I think.
No. I understand the question. I understand why you say it that way. But I like I said, here's the thing. I'm also not going to agree with everybody. And I don't expect that we're intelligent and people with our own minds. It's okay to disagree. And so whatever you call me and whoever I talk to, I guarantee you at some point I'm going to agree with them on something and I'm going to disagree with them on something. And what that means then is let's have enough grace for one another and enough trust in each other to give each other the benefit of the doubt that we can have an honest conversation about what it is that we want to accomplish. So I welcome the conversation with everybody across the political spectrum. I'm looking forward to sitting down with anybody who wants to talk. And then whatever you call me, I'll be ready for it. But I want you to, once you call me that, then I want us to have a sit down, and then you can sort of see, well, I don't know what he is, but what I can tell you I am. I'm a believer in Minneapolis, and I'm a believer in our people in every corner of the city.
I actually don't think they will call you that. I think you probably have a pretty good defense to that. So one of the things Mayor Frey benefited from in 21 was the pro versus anti-police binary. Mm-hmm. I don't think you're easily pigeonholed into that, so it may not be a thing you have to deal with. But we're not gonna in 2025 have an election that is defined that way, because I think Mayor Frey was so vulnerable that year. The failure was so clear, and I think a lot of people voted on fear. They were motivated by fear, and Frey felt like the safe choice.
Yes, sir. I completely agree. And that actually, therein lies my biggest criticism, though. After George Floyd was killed, after we were ground zero for that uprising, where we were on the international scene as the site of that atrocious killing, the one thing that the mayor and so many others failed to do is to step up and bring us all together in a constructive way to respond to it. There was no leadership, there was no attempt to bring us together and talk about how we can move forward, how we can address why we ended up here, and then forecast for the world our serious attempt to deal with this. And that's why I think we got caught up in that, because rather than the mayor, really sort of taking that road and really sort of calling on every corner of our city to really not only confront what happened, confront how we ended up here, and then begin to think constructively about how to move forward. When you don't have that, then you get defensive. And then when you get defensive, you start, putting your thumb on all of the ways that we are afraid of each other and all of the cleavages and in the meantime, guess what? Minneapolis did not take the lead. Minneapolis did not come forward with police reform. Minneapolis did not come forward with how other cities were even trying to do that. Again, ground zero, we did. And why didn't we do that? And by the way, because we didn't do it, I don't think we had a coherent conversation with the state legislature. I don't think we had a coherent conversation with the county. And then those levels of government were left to try to do what they thought was best. And again, guess what? Notice what I just said. We did not combine our resources, our thinking, because of that. And so at some level, I think we also missed an opportunity. We missed an opportunity. And then guess what? Because we missed that opportunity, right after that, we had Dante Wright. We had Amir Locke. 2 other deaths that again brought, and again, largely because we did not seriously sit down and start really thinking through. Maybe it would have happened and maybe not. But my point is, we didn't do what the world both expected and what we should have done, because we knew this happened on our watch, this happened during our time. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to step up. This happened to us. This happened in our city. How are we going to do it? But I think the mayor chose fear. I think the mayor chose fear and pitted parts of the city against each other. And I tell you this, I know it from experience. It doesn't matter. The face of that fear is black, and the face of that fear is North Minneapolis. So my community suffers because the mayor chose fear instead of trying to figure out how we're going to bring people together and build this city up.
So I watch, I'm a council watcher. I watch what's going on, and it seems like the mayor and the city council are getting along worse than ever.
Yeah.
They don't trust each other.
Right.
Like they don't. There was the thing where they're trying to fund the agate shelter downtown,
Right,
and the council wanted to give them money, and they did, which is their charter authority to do so. And the mayor's administration was like, no, we actually don't have that money, and now we have to defund these other priorities in North Minneapolis. And the council is like, no, you're not telling the truth.
Right.
And me on the outside, I don't know who is telling the truth. I have my inclinations and biases, but I don't know.
Yeah.
And so is that something you can pledge to improve, the council mayoral relations? Are there council members you have relationships with and you get along well with? Is that going to get better?
Yes, John. Yes. And here's why I tell you yes, because it goes back to another question I just answered. Because I'm not interested in pegging somebody as something. I'm interested in talking to the duly elected legislative body. There is no reason for there to be this kind of defensive behavior and inability to work together. I just don't understand it. Notice, I didn't say you're going to agree on everything. No, you're not. But I think what we do need to do is have the maturity to be able to talk to one another and even say, where can we agree? Where can we work together? What is it that we want? Can we share? So that whole fight, to me, I'll be honest with you, I still don't understand why that had to be some kind of fighting match. I mean, I really, in terms both ideologically and policy-wise, I'm just at a loss. Other than either you want an ideological fight for something, or you've pegged somebody as something so that you can't approach them with the kind of respect and good faith so that we can try to work on things together. I think it comes from either an unwillingness to share resources, to share ideas. I don't know what that gets us. And so I'll tell you right now, John, as mayor, that's not where I will pledge to every city council member that the door is open. There's always opportunity for conversation. I want to find the things that we already agree upon so that we can start off, running. And then where we don't agree, how about we try to understand where the other is coming from? And then here's what good democracy is like. And then when if you have an idea that I disagree, you know what I'm going to try to do? I'm going to try to get you to change your idea, or I'm going to try to see what I can bring my ideas on. I'm not going to come to you with finger pointing. I'm going to come to you with my best idea. And then what we do is we'll marshal our evidence. And then guess what? We'll go out there, and sometimes we'll have to talk to the voters and say, I disagree. I disagree with that idea. And then I'm going to tell you why I disagree with that idea. I'm not for politics. I'm going to tell you why I think my idea is the best one. But by the way, here's where it's so important, though. If when I was in Washington, let me give you just an anecdote. When I was in Washington, I was there in '94 when the Republicans took over. And many of us staff people, we thought, it's over. We're not going to be able to do anything. We're not going to get everything. And they took control and we went to work. And you know what? Even to my surprise, what that did was it made me work harder for my ideas. It made me see places where, actually, I can work with that. I mean, I don't agree with what you're doing right here, but how about this? And there was some good work. Now, this is before Republicans stopped being able to govern, period. Now, we got a whole class of people who governing is not even in their purview. They're not interested in that. But in 94, those were Republicans. I disagree with them vehemently, but they still knew they had to govern. But I tell that story to say that actually made me better at my work. It certainly made me learn a lot, because I had to counter some conservative approaches that I either didn't agree with or that I did believe would be harmful. And the question for me was, okay, how do I counter it? And how do I prevail in not only with my colleagues, but with members of Congress, that they themselves can say, okay, no, our people got to work and we figured this out. And the reason I give that anecdote is because I don't, to me, it's not so much someone's ideological positioning. It should not dictate your approach to them. Someone's ideological positioning should give you some information about what they care about, so that you can try to convince them that, you know what, this may not come from your perspective, but it gets at what you care about. And I think we can do it. By the way, that's the same thing I want from the council. I want the council to say to me, okay, I know where he's coming from, and I know what he's interested in. So, hey, listen, I know you want to, the analogy I get is that I know you want to go to Vegas and you like going by car. I want to go to Vegas too, but we want to do it by plane. We want to get there together and want to get there at the same time. How are we going to make this work? And there are all kinds of permutations to get there. We may decide, we'll go in so many ways in the car, and then we're going to have to get in. How many permutations to get to Vegas? How many routes? How many?
If we're being political about it, if you want some political advice from me, you got to work in the trains or the buses into your answer, or bike. We could bike to Vegas. Why aren't you pandering to the bike community?
Well, hey, how about we get in there and figure out what we can do? And here's another thing I always want, and I say this to people at church all the time. Here's my pledge to you too. I know that I may lose on a fight, but I still care about Minneapolis, and I care about the people of Minneapolis. So I'm not going home. I'm not going away. I'm going to have to work with you again. So I'm not going to make an enemy out of you, because we've got too much other work to do. Yes, I lost on this battle, but why would I make you my permanent enemy when we've got other priorities and other challenges we got? I still need to work with you. So I promise you, when I lose, you're not my permanent enemy. We've got other things we've got to get done, and I'm going to be in the fight with you to get those things up. And I'm going to want you to. And I know sometimes you're going to be with me, and sometimes you're not going to be with me. This is the way the world works. And I'm going to try to convince you over, and then I'm going to try to convince the voters if I think you need to. But at the same time, I still want to work with you. I got to, if I want this city to do what it has to do.
Here's a question about tax revenue. Tough budget times in the city, and the mayor recently announced his intention to create a work group on finding ways to find more tax revenue. Some of the options that have been mentioned, like an added sales tax, like St. Paul did, an income tax on high earners, a wealth tax. And you don't necessarily have to tell me which of those you prefer, but do you think that you can if you want, but do you think that's the right direction? Do we need to find other sources of tax revenue in the city?
Yeah. So here's everything you just mentioned that he wants to do. It's fine, but my only concern about it is that it fundamentally is lodged in the typical frame. There's no sort of. I don't get a sense that there's an attempt to really confront the reality of a reduced tax capacity after sort of a life-changing thing like COVID. And so what that does mean is that my only hope is that you don't have the usual suspects in that conversation, because we're going to get the same kinds of limited options. Boston has gone through that, and it always ends up on some kind of tax on something else. And again, in essence, what I'm saying is that to me is just the beginning of that kind of work. The question that we have to ask ourselves is what is beyond the frame of our typical sort of economic, our typical fiscal understanding of what's going on. And to me, it just feels like that's not enough to deal with something that no one could have predicted, something like COVID, and the sort of cultural shift in work. And by the way, in what corporations do, what kind of costs they're going to incur, and the things that they're looking at in terms of their pricing. And look, I know I have friends all across the United States. Some people work in companies that are bringing everybody back and require them to come back. But again, to me, that is only arguing within the frame of what we're used to, the fiscal frame that we're so familiar with. It does not seriously look at what has shifted in our economy, what has shifted in the culture of work, what has shifted in how people do it. And so do all of that work around what kind of sort of immediate tax you can do. But I think we need some longer term, more innovative work in terms of the new reality, the new normal that we've encountered. What does that look like? How do we think about it? How do we, again, I always want everybody to pay their fair share. I don't want to saddle citizens with more taxes than they already have. I worry about a sales tax because it's going to hit the poor even harder. So again, but that's where we always end up in the frame of fiscal policy every time. How do we begin to think differently? And by the way, we've had experience in that. The existence of food halls, what's going on in the North Loop, some of that comes out of real opening and innovative thinking about how to do things. And then this is where we go into sort of how do we use the city's regulatory authority and zoning authority to think differently about how we can do this. So that's the only I would offer that. My concern is that we come away with the usual fiscal policies and fiscal choices that we tend to, and then we don't give ourselves a chance to think outside that frame and have a broader conception of how we can not only what downtown can be for, what it could look like. What kinds of businesses could be there? How could we encourage and encourage new entrepreneurship? How can we really, in some ways, be an incubator for non-traditional business opportunities? How do we work with underserved communities to incubate entrepreneurship there? And those are some of the questions that I think are longer term, but they also implicate how we think about fiscal policy, regulatory policy, things that we are used to doing, and how do we get ourselves to think outside that frame.
So it sounds like you're suggesting we should grow our way.
Grow, innovate, think differently. Again, I'm like I said, I want those who can pay their fair share. I want them to do it. I think this where we find ourselves now. The reduced tax capacity is because, in so many ways, we have allowed corporations and businesses, large businesses, to dictate, how we're going to exist. And so that's why we're caught up short now. And then what we end up doing is we're going to be saddling the citizens with some of that bill. And that's what I'm worried about. I don't want to saddle people, especially people who are already struggling. I don't want to saddle them with the tax bill. I don't want to saddle people who are going to buy groceries with a higher bill because, we got, in some ways we let business, dictate how we're going to show up. And then when they pull back or when they're out of the equation, we turn to people who can least afford it. That's just my biggest concern.
So I've kept you longer than I said I would, and I'm wondering, is there more about your campaign that we haven't talked about? What do you want people to know that's going on?
Listen, just go to the website. We're at the beginning stages of this. There's more to come, so stay tuned. One thing I just want people to know, one of the reasons we're out so early, I think some people was like, well, why you come out so early? One of the reasons I'm out so early, anybody who might be interested in running or who might be running, I'm the only one I think who doesn't have an organization of any kind. So one of the reasons that we came out so early is simply because we've got a longer road to take than some others who might jump into this race, and so there's more to come. There's more for us to do, and so you'll see that. So stay tuned. Stay tuned. And the only other message I have, one of the things that our focus on. I hope I can say that to you, John. We want we want Kamala Harris and Tim Walz to win.
Yes. Did you think I was a third party person? I interviewed someone recently who said they were voting for Jill Stein, and it took all of my self-control not to reach through my screen. Of course I'm voting for the Democratic ticket, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. I want to be alive in 25. I have a pre-existing condition. I want health care. I want health care. I don't want to see mass deportations. I'm not voting for the guy whose own chief of staff is like, hey, I think this guy is a Nazi. He really is.
Listen, go to DeWayneForMinneapolis.com. And there are ways for people to get involved. There are ways for people to do things. Again, like I said, we're starting early, and there's more to do. And right now, we're just trying to focus on getting our organization in place. But like I said in the video I did, I want us to get Vice President Harris and Governor Tim Walz elected, and so that's where my energy is. Actually, I'm about to go do something about that now. To support that. So go to DeWayneForMinneapolis.com, and you'll start to see where you can plug in if you want to. You can learn a little bit more about what we're doing, and we're going to be unrolling, rolling out some things that you will want to see throughout the rest of the year.
Yes, vote for Kamala Harris, because this is going to be a completely different city election in 2025 if we have to run it on the Trump administration. So please.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, DeWayne Davis.
Thank you, John. I really appreciated this conversation.
This has been the Wedge Live podcast. I'm your host, John Edwards. Thank you for listening.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.